My name is Miranda Ray. I'm going to be performing my song Prayer for Love, but first and foremost, I'd like to give a big congratulations to Distinguished Bostonians, Marty, Andrew, and Lee. Thank you. Boom, ba-da, boom, 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 ba-da, ba-da, boom, ba, boom, ba, ba-da, boom, ba-da, ba-da, boom, ba-da, boom, 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 ba-da, ba-da. Boom, ba, boom, ba, ba, boom. Couples passing by. I wonder when will it be my time to feel the love that I see through my eyes. Waiting patiently for the man that claims to be my soulmate, my destiny. Ba-da, ba, boom, ba-da, boom, 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 ba-da, ba. Boom, ba, boom, ba, ba, boom, ba, da, ba, boom, ba, da, boom, 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 ba, da, ba, boom, ba, boom, ba, ba, boom. I wonder if we'll be as happy as can be. Fill my heart with joy, take me to ecstasy. I know we can't foresee the future God's plan for me, but while He's by my side, He'll give me the strength to survive this thing that we call life. Ba-da, ba-da, boom, ba-da, boom, 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 ba-da, ba-da, boom, 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 ba-da, boom, ba-da, ba-da, boom, ba-da, boom, 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 ba-da, ba-da. Boom, 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 ba, ba, boom. Lovers up above, do you hear my lonely cry? Oh, won't you send me an angel by my side? Lonely nights and hopeless dreams, leave me wanting more. Oh yeah. To my lovers up above, do you hear my lonely cry? Boom, ba-da, boom, 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 ba-da, ba-da, boom, ba, boom, ba-ba-da, boom, boom. Thank you.
Thank you, Miranda. That was a beautiful way to kick off this event. I'm Jim Mooney, President and CEO of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our first virtual annual meeting. The theme for this year's annual meeting is Boston Business Forward. The COVID-19 pandemic is changing the way we all do business, including the Chamber. There's been a great deal said about the future of work. That future is beginning now. There is no going back in so many ways. So are we going to try to find a path forward, or are we going to do what we have always done in Boston and create the path forward, innovate, and build a stronger Boston business community? And this time, do it for all. The ongoing pandemic has caused a lot of pain, including the loss of loved ones, severe illness, unemployment, and the shutdown of commerce. It has also shed a brighter light on economic inequities, hitting small businesses and people of color, especially Black and brown communities, the hardest. We might have thought that nothing could overshadow the past few months of living through the pain of a public health and economic crisis. But a centuries-long crisis of racism and inequality in this country has done just that. The pain of this disease experienced by our Black community is playing out all around us, and calls for action are loud and clear. When I am asked if I, the Chamber, or our business community has done enough to achieve equity, the evidence speaks for itself. That answer is no. It's time. It's time to get to action that is informed by empathetic listening and learning. Let's work together to dismantle the duality of world that exists in educational opportunity, access to health care, wealth, and wage gaps. Business leaders, community leaders, and residents must work to create an equitable society where people of all racial backgrounds can economically thrive and pursue their happiness. As the business of Boston moves forward, we must ensure we bring everyone along with commitments to action. Action in our hiring and promotional practices, action in our business partnerships, action in spending with businesses owned by people of color, action in fostering welcome and inclusive cultures in our workplaces. In pursuit of action, we must confront challenges, remove the barriers, and refuse to accept the excuses. And we must act by embracing metrics, transparency, and accountability. Leadership is always vital in moments of change, and that is particularly true this year. I'm thrilled we are honoring 3 leaders who have made it their life work to create access and bring others to the table to share in and experience opportunities for all. To set the stage for the rest of this program, here's more on this year's theme, Boston Business Forward.
Bloomberg is proud to be a presenting sponsor of this year's annual meeting. We agree that moving Boston business forward is the only direction. The future of work is here, and our region and community are ready to take on the challenge of a changed world. There is no going back, only forward together. Life can change in an instant. The world as we know it can disappear. But life goes on in a new direction, with new challenges and new opportunities. And through it all, Boston business leads.
We have to do everything we can so we don't lose momentum. We're strong people. We're resilient people. We're going to get through this. We're going to be Boston strong.
We're seeing many companies reimagine what the future work looks like. And from my perspective, that gives us a massive opportunity to improve diversity in the workplace so we can create better environments for people who deal with long commutes, dealing with children.
The Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce has been a forceful advocate for the business community and the broader community in this epidemic. They've advocated to make sure that we have right childcare services for our employers, the right transportation, safe transportation, sufficient testing to be able to bring people back to work with confidence. They've really been a voice of clarity in this epidemic.
I see the Chamber as a champion for small business, and that's especially been true in this pandemic.
I know we can do a better job moving Boston forward, not just through business, but also through how we engage every single member of our community. Fairness, equity, acceptance, tolerance, inclusion, and that's how I think about Boston forward.
The Chamber is a connector and a convener, and during this pandemic, it's very important that businesses and the people in businesses do not feel alone.
As a woman in minority-owned small business, I can say that the Chamber makes sure that every business gets a seat at the table.
The pandemic has certainly made clear the economic and racial disparities in our city and the nation. I hope that we'll be able to shine a bright light on these issues and that all of us who are in leadership positions roll up our sleeves and get to work making this an even better place than it already is.
We've always been a city that's moved forward. We've pushed limits and broke boundaries, and this is no different. We're still moving forward together.
Now welcome our annual meeting co-chairs, Sandy Fenwick of Boston Children's Hospital and Jerry Sargent of Citizens Bank.
Hello, everyone. Jerry and I are thrilled to be with you this afternoon, albeit virtually, for Boston business community's biggest and most important event of the year. We'd like to start by thanking our presenting sponsors for making this celebration possible. Suffolk, Citizens Bank, Bloomberg, Weiner Ventures, and Biogen.
I agree, Sandy. And we'd also like to thank our fellow annual meeting host committee members for their support during such a challenging time for both businesses and people.
Absolutely, Jerry. Being in banking and in healthcare, we have truly witnessed firsthand the resilience of both our businesses and our people in our community. So it's a privilege today to be able to stop, take a moment, and celebrate the pillars of our community Lee, Andrew, and Marcy.
Sandy and I are excited about this afternoon's lineup, so let's get to it. I'm honored to introduce the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Charlie Baker. We are fortunate to have him join us each year and to have such strong leadership from his administration. Welcome, Governor.
Hey everybody, Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker here. Normally, past 5 years when I've done this event on behalf of the Chamber, I've been standing behind a podium, the BCEC, with 1,500 to 2,000 people out in an audience representing the sort of power structure of Greater Boston's business and civic community. Not this year. COVID-19 had other ideas, and all of us have adapted based on our desire to reduce the spread, find a way to battle this disease, deal with the outbreak, and slowly and gradually and carefully reopen our economy back up. It's been a really difficult period for everybody. You combine that with the economic slowdown associated with the shutdowns and the loss of jobs and possibility, and in addition to that, all the issues associated with race and injustice that came about as a result of a series of incidents that culminated in the terrible tragedy and the murder of George Floyd. I honestly believe that at the end of the day, we here in Massachusetts and in the city of Boston will find a way to link our arms together and work our way through this and move forward, because that is what we do and what we've always done. This trip up the hill will be harder, but I believe we're built for it and that we will get there. I do want to thank Jerry Sargent and Sandy Fenwick for hosting this year's virtual event, and I want to recognize and say congratulations to this year's honorees, Lee Pelton, Andrew Dreyfus, and Marcy Reed. All three of those honorees are well-known names to everybody who's part of the Boston community. They've all been leaders in their field. They've all been there when the community has needed them, and they've all pitched in every time they've been asked to engage in civic events of one sort or another. I must say that for me, every year, this event is a reminder of how great it is to have a chance to be governor of a state that has a capital city like Boston and a business community like ours. It's a really special place, and we are dealing in extraordinary and unprecedented times. And as I said, we'll find our way, no doubt.
Thank you for joining us, Governor, and for your ongoing collaboration and support of the business community. I'm now pleased to pay tribute to our first honoree, a longtime Chamber Board member and my friend, Marcy Reed.
Weiner Ventures is proud to be a presenting sponsor of this year's annual meeting. Our first Distinguished Bostonian is a powerhouse in business and in the greater Boston community. I am pleased to induct into the Academy of Distinguished Bostonians the President of National Grid Massachusetts and Executive Vice President of U.S. Policy and Social Impact, Marcy Reed.
Marcy's a leader in her office and out in the community. She's somebody who brings people together, reaches out, talks through problems, and all the while shows compassion both for the folks who work for her as well as the greater community.
She's one of those people that always gets the call when a new initiative is being started, there's something to be done, when people are looking for advice on a certain matter.
I see my role as a leader as just another player on the team. My job is simply to ensure we're all set up to be our best selves.
Marcy works so hard to connect with the community. She's chaired the Massachusetts Business Roundtable, sits on the Chamber of Commerce, chairs the partnership, while running one of the largest companies in the area.
Being part of a community means that we celebrate successes together, and it means we help our fellow man when he or she needs help.
Marcy's helped move the Boston business community forward because she's somebody who has compassion and strong leadership skills. We have real problems that we're confronting in our city and in our state. And Marcy's got the tool set, I know, to bring us to where we need to be.
I'm inspired by so many people in town who care about dealing with racism and injustice. It'll take all of us, and it will be uncomfortable. Let's just get it done.
She was one of the leaders that really encouraged a stronger push for the greater diversity of our board.
Marcy's a woman in leadership. She's at the table, and she knows how important it is to have more women and people of color at the table.
It takes all members of this great city to ensure that business provides opportunities for our citizens, where the quality of your education doesn't depend on your zip code, and where equity and justice are facts, not just aspirations.
She is so worthy of this recognition. She has accomplished so much in her relatively young career, and I know I speak for many of us that we just cannot wait to see the many things she's going to do in the future.
I would like to congratulate you, Marcy, for your award. This is well-deserved. Biogen is proud to be a sponsor of this year's meeting. We are grateful for the work of the Chamber to support local businesses, particularly over the past several months. I am pleased to have the honor of introducing our next speaker, a leader dedicated to making Boston the best city in the world to live, to work, and to do business. He has worked tirelessly to protect our community in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. I commend his effort to provide essential services to the most impacted and to ensure our first responders are equipped to do their job. Our next speaker is also someone who's steadfast in his mission to fight racial injustice and make Boston an inclusive community for all. Please join me now in welcoming Mayor Marty Walsh.
Thank you, Michelle. I want to welcome everyone to the Chamber's first virtual annual meeting. And thank you, Jim and the Chamber, for hosting and leading this event today. I also want to congratulate the distinguished Bostonians being recognized today. Dr. Lee Pelton, Andrew Dreyfus, and Marcy Reed. Thank you for your leadership, especially during these difficult times for our city and our Commonwealth. The coronavirus pandemic has changed our world and has changed life as we know it. In Boston, we acted quickly and urgently to protect the residents and businesses. We strengthened our resources for students and families while schools have been closed. We support our small businesses to help them stay afloat. And through the Boston Resiliency Fund, we raised over $30 million for individuals and families who need it the most right now. We still have a long way to go. Economic recovery is going to be a slow and gradual process. But we are a resilient city of resilient people. We work hard, we look out for one another, and no one, and nothing can keep us down for long. We will get through this together. At the same time, we must commit not to going back to normal after the crisis ends. We must work together to create a new and better normal, one that is inclusive and truly lifts everyone up. Systemic racism has impacted and continues to impact every aspect of life for people of color in our city, especially our Black residents, leading to disparities in health, wealth, safety, and personal well-being. In every city in America, we are seeing calls for racial justice and equality and an end to the status quo. We must recognize that we are living in a moment of urgency and opportunity in our nation's history, and we must seize it. This is the time to show real leadership and a determination to move forward. We are proud to do this work with all of you to build a better future for everyone.
Thank you for being with us, Mayor, and for your leadership on behalf of everyone in this city. Now please join me in honoring a true leader in every sense of the word, Dr. Lee Pelton.
Citizens Bank is thrilled to be a presenting sponsor of this year's annual meeting. I am honored to introduce a man with a bold vision to make Emerson College the global hub for arts, communication, and liberal arts. It is my pleasure to help induct into the Academy of Distinguished Bostonians the president of Emerson College, Lee Pelton.
Lee Pelton is a visionary, he is principled, and he is committed.
He is a man of immense integrity, but he is also a man of compassion.
He's very civic-minded. He's deeply involved in the fabric of our city in so many different ways. Leaders like Lee help us to make Boston a more inclusive and more vibrant city.
I'm inspired by the human spirit. There is no excellence without diversity in human life, in our businesses, in colleges and universities.
Dr. Pelton leads by modeling, where everyone's voice matters. He's modeled that at Emerson, he's modeled that at the school board, at the foundation board, and he models that, frankly, for our students.
Our decisions are based on a simple principle of doing the right thing.
Lee certainly is a great example of how businesses can get involved in moving forward. He's expanded Emerson's footprint. He's helped make downtown a destination. He's literally transforming the housing market by creating more on-campus housing.
Emerson is embedded in the city. So all of the construction and buildings that we have done is not really about construction and buildings. It's about people. And how do we engage people?
Lee is a civic icon and a champion of social justice.
I think most of us were horrified by Mr. Floyd's death because it seems so devoid of humanity. And that capacity to see the humanity that lies in the heart of all of that is really key.
If we're going to create a new, better normal here in Boston and show a better way forward for the rest of the country, we need to keep speaking out against injustices and acting on our values. And Lee Pelton can be a person that can help us guide us through that.
Dr. Pelton is a distinguished Bostonian because he gets up every morning thinking about the future of Boston, the future citizens of Boston, and making sure that they have every opportunity to build the Boston they deserve, the Boston we all want to see.
He is all about not only moving the city forward, but he lives a life of lifting as he has climbed.
Congratulations, Lee. We'll now take a brief break. Please enjoy a performance from Boston Arts Academy, the city's only public high school for the visual and performing arts. Now welcome the Chair of the Chamber's Board of Directors, Paul Ayub.
Thank you, Jim. Serving as chair and working with you and your talented team has been a privilege. I'd like to begin by introducing the newest members of our board. They represent a broad range of industries and backgrounds, and like all of our board members, the best of Boston business. I look forward to serving with all of you on behalf of Greater Boston. Our annual meeting is usually a time to celebrate, but today, it also is a moment to pause and contemplate. Our theme this afternoon is Boston Business Forward. But we should not, indeed we cannot move forward until we have a shared understanding of the action needed to bring about racial equity and justice. Dr. Lee Pelton, whom we honored today, has asked each of us a simple but important question. What are you going to do? Others have reflected on that question today, but it deserves an answer from each of us. My answer? We need to commit to meaningful, accountable action, to making change happen now in our homes, our work, and our community, to being anti-racist and not just non-racist, to speaking out even at our own personal and professional cost, to continuing to actively listen and learn. We need to commit so that when we meet a year from now, we will see this as the moment when true change began. The Chamber has built a foundation poised to impact change. But as has been said, we have not done enough. Together, we need to be relentless in building upon that foundation to ensure equity is provided for all. I am hopeful of what we can do. You may recall that the invitation for this meeting states, "Our region and community are ready to take on the challenge of a changed world." I know I am. I know the Chamber is. The question is, are you? The next speaker joins me in that commitment, and so it's my pleasure to introduce our incoming board chair, Micho Spring. Micho is one of the region's most respected professionals, both in the public and private sectors, and for the past 17 years, she's served on our board, sharing her wisdom and her strategic thinking. The board is fortunate to have you as our next leader. So Micho, the floor and the chair are now yours. Thank you all.
Thank you, Paul. Your passion for this chamber and for this community is unparalleled. I'm both humbled and energized by the opportunity to chair the Chamber Board at such a pivotal time for our business community. I first want to recognize your exceptional tenure as chair, one that'll be remembered for your commitment to both elevating the voice of the Chamber as an advocate for the economic competitiveness of our region, and for welcoming more women and people of color onto the Chamber Board than ever before in our history. Those who identify as women now represent 40% of our board, and people of color represent 20%. Paul also oversaw the development of the Chamber's first strategic plan in more than a century of operation. So on behalf of all of us, Paul, thank you for your service. I assumed this role at a time of enormous upheaval and uncertainty for each of us personally and for the businesses and institutions that we represent. At the same time, this is a moment of great urgency and great opportunity, one that calls on all of us to reimagine and rebuild a better, more equitable and inclusive economy. The Chamber is in a unique position to lead. We have a diverse and committed board, staff, and membership who can provide a unified voice, not only for our businesses, but for a new generation of talent who are both calling for change and are key to our future success. Our business community has a proud history of stepping up when Boston has faced serious challenges. In the 60s, when the city's economy was at a standstill and unable to recover from a deep recession, the business community fought for a new city charter and worked with government to jumpstart private investment and seed the new Boston we benefit from today. In the 90s, public-private partnerships like the Boston Compact became a national model of business and government working together on education issues and job training. Now is our time to act. The impact of COVID and the aftermath of George Floyd's killing showed we have not made enough progress. Our workforce expects business to channel their values and help bring about much needed societal change. Organizations like the Chamber were founded to provide a vehicle for raising the norms of corporate behavior, and our Chamber is committed to raising the bar. As the first Latina and an immigrant to chair this board, I'm mindful of my responsibility to champion a more equitable economy so that we can attract, retain, and welcome the best diverse talent to this region. I am deeply grateful for the opportunities I have been given in this city, including this one, opportunities which my parents could not have dreamt of when we first arrived in this country. So with deep gratitude and commitment to this community, I look forward to working with all of you to extend opportunity and to build a more equitable, just, and diverse Boston, which I firmly believe is critical to our ability to compete, to lead, and to continue to thrive. Now, please join me in celebrating our final inductee into the Academy of Distinguished Bostonians, my good friend Andrew Dreyfus.
Bloomberg is honored to be a presenting sponsor of this year's annual meeting. Our next distinguished Bostonian is recognized as a national leader on some of the country's most challenging healthcare issues. I'm pleased to induct into the Academy of Distinguished Bostonians the president and CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield Massachusetts, Andrew Dreyfus.
He's driven by this deep moral compass.
He's never said, can't be done, always said, let's figure this out.
We've always been a company that's deeply committed to the community, volunteering, making donations, partnering. You might think a lot of that would stop when everyone's at home in an epidemic, but in fact, it persisted and grew.
Andrew recognizes that Massachusetts sets the pace for the rest of the country, and he has done it by driving our Massachusetts health reform for coverage, driving the alternative quality contract that has shown insurers across the whole country how to get better outcomes at lower costs, and now setting the standards for how we take care of people facing serious illness or the end of life.
I call him a servant leader because, in fact, he's always serving. He's sending food into areas where people didn't have access and deploying resources into areas where people may not be getting served. He's always thinking about these issues of equity.
He recognizes that some of the most important things that we can do aren't always the ones that get us profitability.
Andrew views healthcare as an economic equity and social issue.
More than half our board and our senior leadership are women and people of color. That sends a message to our company and to the community. We've recognized that innovation and inclusion are almost two sides of a similar coin. If a company wants to be innovative, it has to start by being inclusive.
He's been very successful achieving results, but he does it in a way that brings people along with him.
We have to reach our hand out in new ways. We have to grasp hands together in new ways. Everyone talks about the new normal post-COVID. We need a better normal in the way we relate to each other, the way we think about race, class, and injustice in America. I think we can do it, and I'll be so excited to take part in that revolution.
Andrew, congratulations on a well-deserved recognition. Thank you to everyone for joining us. On behalf of the Suffolk family, I'm thrilled to be with all of you today as a presenting sponsor for the 2020 annual meeting. We are proud of an organization that has demonstrated such remarkable leadership during the most challenging times in our city's history. Marcy, Lee, and Andrew have exemplified the kind of authentic and collaborative leadership that have welcomed all businesses throughout our region to take a seat at the table and share their ideas for the future. On behalf of all chamber members, thank you and congratulations to Marcy, Lee, and Andrew for your tremendous efforts. It is now my honor and privilege to introduce our featured speaker, a visionary leader who is charting a course for the business community in Greater Boston, the nation, and the world, Dr. Nithin Noria. Dean Noria is the 10th Dean of the Harvard Business School. Throughout his tenure, Dean Noria has focused on developing a stimulating culture of innovation, intellectual ambition, inclusion, and growth at the Harvard Business School. He has overseen many advances at HBS, including the launch of groundbreaking programs such as the Harvard Innovation Lab and the U.S. Competitiveness Project. Dean Noria is one of the most respected voices in the world today on human motivation, leadership, and corporate transformation. He has co-authored 16 books. He has written for the Wall Street Journal, The Atlantic, Financial Times, and has been interviewed and quoted by ABC, CNN, Business Week, Fortune, and the New York Times. Needless to say, his opinions are greatly valued and respected by well-informed audiences, subject matters, and influencers throughout the world. On a personal level, what I find most remarkable about Nithin is his ability to bring people together from different backgrounds and fields so that they can collaborate, share creative ideas, and address challenges together. He is the dean of one of the most prestigious institutions in the world. Yet, he is always accessible and always willing to share his insights, counsel, and ideas for the greater good. As chair of Brigham Health, I can tell you he has made a significant impact as an advisor to the healthcare sector, providing an in-depth understanding of the state of healthcare today and how technology will drive healthcare sector tomorrow. And most importantly, Dean Noria is a kind and thoughtful and genuine gentleman, a loving husband to his wife, Monica, and a doting father to his 2 daughters. I am proud to call Nithin my friend. Please join me in welcoming Dean Nithin Noria, who will have a conversation with Jim Mooney on the future of business. Jim, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, John, and thank you for your continued leadership in the Boston business community. Thank you, Dean Noria, for joining us today and for having a conversation with us on Boston Business Forward, our theme for today's annual event. Why don't we get started right away? Pandemic crisis, creating a health crisis, an economic crisis, now a societal crisis and a racial crisis. Lots of uncertainty, lots of talk about moving into a new normal, whatever that means. What's your thoughts on how business and commerce will move forward into whatever that new normal is?
First and foremost, thank you so much for inviting me. And it's a real privilege to be a part of this wonderful group and this great gathering. I wish I had a crystal ball which would allow me to answer the question that you posed, Jim. I think this is one of the biggest questions we face even at Harvard Business School as we think about the fall, which is, there's a lot of people who are trying to announce what they will do for the fall, which is some people are saying we're going to go all virtual. Some people are saying we're going to have every student in class. And every time I hear one of those things, it makes me wonder, do they have something that I don't know? Because the way I look at it, as of now, thanks to the great leadership of Governor Baker and our Mayor Walsh, our state and our city has done a very good job of making sure that we are opening gradually as things have gotten better, right? So we are at least fortunate to be in a state and a city that has acted responsibly to date, which means that the likelihood that when we reopen, things won't come back in a big surge are lower. But nevertheless, the whole country is reopening. And if you talk to epidemiologists today, some of them will say we're going to have a second wave. Some of them say, no, this might peter out. I am praying with fingers, toes, and everything else crossed that at least in our city and our state, we end up having a continued attenuation or at least a level of the coronavirus that doesn't overwhelm our healthcare systems and will allow us to continue to reopen the economy in a progressively important way so that by the end of the year, we will be back to a fully functioning economy. But is there a risk of a second wave? There certainly remains one. So my view is that all of us as business leaders have to continue to maintain the prudence to not take too quickly comfort that this is behind us. On the other hand, we do have to lean forward. So I am trying to lean forward and saying that if there is any opportunity for Harvard Business School to be open to welcome students back, we will try and do that safely. That would be my advice to any business in Boston, which is try and welcome the people who are your constituencies back to your businesses. Try and do it in a way that gives them the assurance that you're doing it safely. And let's try and restore our economy to the engine that it is to create prosperity, because of course we need to protect lives, but we also need to protect livelihoods.
Yeah. Well, as you're watching the way businesses are dealing with this moment, what trends are catching your eye that you think may continue into the future?
So there's at least one thing that's become very clear, which is as we've all learned to work from home, I don't see a future in which everybody comes back to work. There are, especially in white-collar office work, I could imagine a future in which maybe we end up in an equilibrium that's 50-50, which is 50% of the people at some point will be working from home. On aggregate, it may be the case that some people work from home most of the days, come to work once a week. Other people actually come to work. So we are going to see that companies have learned how to be very productive with people working from home. In fact, I've been blown away by how many people say that their agility, their speed, the length of meetings, the pace at which they can get things done have all in various ways been boosted by having people work at home. At the same time, we also know that people are dying to come back for the social experience that you can only get from being with each other in the office. But I think this idea of how much work gets done remotely and how much work gets done from home will probably permanently change. We've also seen that every business which was not digital has learned how to now suddenly become digital in this moment. So we used to think of Amazon and digital first companies as being the only digital companies. I think every company has learned how to become digital. So that, I think, is a real acceleration that has occurred in this moment. I do think that businesses will become ever more digital as a result of this moment. And in some ways, I think actually it's going to give the traditional, the companies who grew up digital now a run for their money. We've seen this already with Walmart and Amazon. I think Walmart has become a much more formidable competitor to Amazon as a result of this moment. And I think that is going to happen more broadly. A third thing that I think we are very likely to see is that we all saw with the enormous anxiety around PPE and the availability of PPE in our healthcare system, how much global supply chains have created a world in which we don't have sufficient resilience to shocks that might occur. I think we have to create supply chains that will be more resilient. We had focused for 20 years to make supply chains principally more efficient. I think in the next 10 years, we will have to, on top of efficiency, layer resilience into our supply chain so that there is multiple sources of supply, so that if things go down in one place, you're not entirely caught in a trap. More domestic and onshoring will have to occur, I think, in some cases of supply chains to make sure that we have some capacity in the United States to make sure that vital things can be supplied and can be made available if we have interruptions of any kind. The final thing that I am more anxious about is that we had already begun to see a pushback on globalization. And I worry that this moment might cause people to become a little bit even more nationalistic, as everybody worries. So ironically, even though the pandemic affected the whole world, I think this might be a time in which people end up being even more nationalistic.
Okay. Dean, you speak about the HBS mission to develop leaders as having both competence and character. Put your professor hat on for a moment and talk to our audience of business leaders about the importance of competence and character, particularly in this moment of crisis, as I said, public health, economic, racial crisis in this country, and creating the path forward.
So I think that actually what this moment is calling us most to ask are questions of character. I've always said to my students that, of course, that you earn trust as a leader both through your competence, because people expect you to make good decisions. And unless you make good decisions, you lose people's trust. And making good decisions comes from your competence. It's your business knowledge, your wisdom, your street smarts. There's a lot of things that go into what you think of as competence. But I've also said to them, people will forgive you some errors in competence. Nobody bats 100% in terms of all of their decisions. And if you get a few decisions wrong, as long as you don't make it a habit, people will forgive you your failures of competence. It's failures of character that end up being much more costly in business leaders. If people can't trust your character, then it's a very hard time. Then it's very, very difficult for you to lead. And as this current moment of racial injustice and these absolutely horrific deaths that are a long chain of deaths remind us, this is a moment when all of us as business leaders are being called upon to ask, how can we make sure that we can do the things that we say we're committed to? If we say we're committed to justice, if we say we're committed to equality, if our Constitution says that we are a nation that is committed to the belief that every human being is equal, then how can we look people in the face and have organizations that don't deliver that, or have the experiences that we today hear from so many members of our Black community who say, that is not my experience of society. If I have a young son, and I'm a Black person, the fact that people at the age of 8, today I was in a meeting in which someone shared to me that age 7 and 9, 2 children, Black man has to explain to their children that if you go out of the house, be careful. I mean, think if all of us had to do that. I mean, that's a terrifying place to be. And I think this is a moment that is calling upon each of us as individuals and us as a nation to dig deep and say, what can we do in terms of improving personally our character and our national character to address a question that has been asked for 400 years? But this is the moment where I think we must lean into this and try and find a way to not just think about competence, but to think about how do we lead with character.
Yeah. Let's stick with that theme for a moment and put the individual in his or her corporate role. A corporation, people are in business to make money, so a corporation has responsibilities to shareholders, investors. They may feel like social and civic objectives are at odds with the governance model or their business objectives. How does a corporation enable a leader to embrace those social responsibilities, especially in today's environment, beyond making a public statement that this is what we believe in? How that actually drives change or enables a leader to embrace his or her responsibility to bring character to the table?
So look, this may sound like a crazy example, but it's one of the examples that I use to just remind us of how things are possible. I came to this country in 1984, and the 1980s was a time, if some of you who are of that vintage might remember, was when Japan was being perceived as number one. It was the rise of Japan, and this was the days when we were concerned that American competitiveness would be lost to Japan. And Japan essentially was winning because it managed to break the paradox that businesses often perceived, that you could only produce higher quality products at a higher cost. Through things like the total quality management movement, Kaizen, the entire Toyota production system, they managed to create a set of business methods that broke this constraint and said, no, in fact, if you commit yourself to quality, you can, in fact, lower costs. You can have lower inventory. If you do it right the first time, there's less wastage. So they showed a system in which what used to be seen as, if I'm focused on the bottom line, I can't produce quality at lower cost. We're now beginning to see 10 years in which the same thing has been proven with environmental waste. So you take a company like Walmart, when it made a commitment to reducing its environmental footprint and its logistics chain by 50%, initially it thought that would raise prices by 2% across all Walmart goods. Actually, they have found 10 years later that it has reduced prices, that by doing that, they have found a way to not only produce greater social good, but in fact, bring things to the bottom line. I think we have to apply that same mindset to race. This has to be a place where we say, if we increase the number of people who are Black in our executive ranks, in our boardrooms, maybe we'll get more customers. Maybe we'll create greater prosperity. Maybe we'll expand the scope of the business that we can do. Maybe there are other ways in which we will see benefits. We will get better ideas. People whose ideas have not been heard will be ideas that we will bring to the table. So I actually have come to believe that one of the great benefits of being a business person is that if you add something to your objective function, right? You said, this is something that I'm going to do, like I said, quality or the environment. if you add something to your objective function, the creativity of business over time will drive you to find a way to make profit while doing it. I actually do believe that deeply. And I hope that this is a moment in which we will not get trapped in this, what I think is a false paradox of people believing that, yes, I have an obligation to make money and therefore I can't do this. I think the creativity that we should apply ourselves to say, absolutely, a business doesn't function if it doesn't make money. But why can't I make money if I add these social objectives to my business?
One final question, Dean. Maybe something uplifting. What's the opportunity in this moment? I opened by talking about uncertainty and wondering what's the new normal going forward. What's the opportunity for business leaders in this moment?
I did not live in the United States through the 1960s, but I know that I'm here in the United States because of the 1960s. Someone reminded me that one of the great beneficiaries of the Civil Rights Act is us as immigrants, because that act is actually what opened the door to immigrants like me, and particularly South Asian immigrants like me were only able to the country because of the benefits that Martin Luther King and a whole generation of civil rights leaders created in our country. I hope that a few years from now or decades from now, people will think of our generation as a generation that created a step change in the opportunities that are available to people in this country. That's a remarkable opportunity. Who gets the opportunity to be off a moment in a generation where you can make change on something that has been a 400-year challenge for our country? So I very much hope that all of us, as hard as the problem seems today, will find a way to make this moment a moment where people will look back and say, that was a time in which the country made enormous progress on a deep, difficult, and obdurate problem. And I hope that my grandchildren or my children will be able to say that my father's generation did something that made something that was better for all society and all Americans.
Thank you, Dean Noria, for spending time with us today and for your 10 years of leadership at Harvard Business School and in our business community. I'm going to turn it over now to Sandy and Jerry for some closing words.
Thank you, Dean Noria. As we close, I think your point about character is something we all should take to heart. Your words are also a deep reminder that we must all stand up and speak out against racism and work to end both racial inequality, economic inequality, and I will add healthcare inequality.
I couldn't agree more, Sandy. It's beyond time to act. Before we log off, I do want to congratulate our three honorees one more time: Andrew Dreyfus, Lee Pelton, Marcy Reed. They truly exemplify leadership that we need to move forward today. And we couldn't have put this program together, of course, without our sponsors. So I especially want to thank our presenting sponsors, Weiner Ventures, Biogen, Bloomberg, Suffolk, and of course, my friends at Citizens Bank.
So thank you all for joining us today. And I turn it over to you, Jim. Any final words?
I'll close where I began. The Chamber's purpose is to create a region where all businesses and all people can thrive. As Boston business moves forward, equity must be central in everything we do. Thank you all for joining us today. Until next year, when we can hopefully be in person together again.